right, everybody, welcome to our virtual cow femur dissection. So we're looking at a cow femur here. It has been cut in half lengthwise. My assistant here is holding it together for me. That's my daughter, McKenna. And what I wanted to show you is some external features of the cow femur first. So you can see this end, there's this ball-shaped part of the bone. That's actually the proximal epiphysis. And we know it's the proximal one because of this ball-shaped end. That's the part that goes into the ball and socket joint, which is your hip. So you can kind of imagine that fitting right into the hip bone of the cow so they could freely rotate their leg. So that is the proximal end, the proximal epiphysis. And then over here, we have the distal epiphysis. And you can see these kind of roundish shaped things. Those are called condyles. And so that's what forms part of the knee joint. You could kind of picture it almost bending in the knee joint, right? It kind of rotates like that and bends, allows the cow to bend their knee. So that's the distal epiphysis. And then the center part of the bone, the shaft of the bone, this is the diaphysis. All right, now we're going to look at some external features of the cow femur. So the first one I want to show you is I'm holding the portion, the ball and socket joint. So this is the proximal epiphysis of the cow femur. And you can first notice that there is a hole in that proximal end. That's called the meatus. And you can see there's things coming through it. Those are blood vessels and nerves. And that's how the blood vessels and nerves get into the bone. Then we have the hyaline cartilage that we talked about in the last unit. We know that the end caps of bones at movable joints are covered in that hyaline cartilage. So you can see it's smooth, shiny, white. This reduces the friction in the ball and socket joint, makes it very smooth, easy to move. And the same thing at the other end as well. You can see the condyles of the knee joint are also smooth and shiny and white, and that's that hyaline cartilage again. And then when you look at the diaphysis, it does not look like that. And it's much easier if you could actually feel it, but you gotta trust me that it feels kind of rough and almost sandpaper-like. That's because the diaphysis of the bone is coated in something called the periosteum. And that has a purpose because this is where all the skeletal muscle, the tendons, the ligaments have to attach to the bone. So if it was smooth and slippery like this, it wouldn't be able to attach very well. So that's, again, the periosteum, which is the covering on the diaphysis of the femur. All right, now we're going to look at some of the internal features of the cow femur. So first, the two different types of bone we talked about. We talked about compact bone and spongy bone. So the compact bone is going to be on the outer edge of the cow femur. So you can see right there, that is compact bone. It's very dense, it's very hard. So it's compact bone just all along the outside of the cow femur. And then when we look at the epiphyses, you can see the spongy bone. I'll try to stop moving. There you go. So there's the spongy bone within the two ends of the bone. It's a little harder to see over there, but you can, I don't know if you can hear, you can't probably hear this, but as I scratch my fingernail along it, it feels rough. It feels different than the smooth compact bone. So again, dense compact bone here along all the outer edges, and then the spongy bone at the ends of the bone. All right, next we talked about the different types of marrow, and luckily I got two different bones here so you could see the difference. So this one I know is not an adult bone because remember we talked about that the yellow marrow, which is in the center, so this is the yellow marrow here, and then young bones are going to have more red marrow, and you can see the red marrow on the ends of the bone. Not so much on this side, but this side you can really see that red marrow. And the yellow marrow feels, okay, I took some out here, it actually feels just like cold butter. And the reason why it feels just like cold butter is because it's adipose. That's yellow marrow is mostly adipose tissue. I'm sure this is gross, but it kind of feels just like butter, cold butter. You can see it kind of looks like cold butter. And when I scrape a little of that yellow marrow out, which I'm doing right here, you can see the inner lining of the bone. So this is the endosteum. So that's the inner lining of the bone. And this is all compact bone here. So you can really tell the difference. That's all compact bone. And then again, the spongy bone is just on the ends of the bone. So I've taken out some yellow marrow. That's mostly adipose. And now you can see the inner lining of the bone. I also wanted to mention the red marrow. I can't get to the red marrow like I can the yellow marrow because the red marrow is within this spongy bone. So it's kind of inside that spongy bone. So I can't get to it like I can that yellow marrow. And remember, yellow marrow is a site of adipose storage. Red marrow is where our blood cells are made. Okay, now I wanted to show you the difference between a growing bone and an adult bone, so a bone that's done growing. So we talked about the difference between the epiphyseal line and the epiphyseal plate. So this bone here, we can tell for several reasons, was a bone that was still growing. You can see the epiphyseal plate, which is right here, is so much more distinct. And if you look closely, you can even see the thin line of cartilage, because that is how bones grow. We start with cartilage, the bone gets a little bit longer, and then the cartilage is replaced by bone, and that's what the growth plate is. So this is the epiphyseal plate. We know that the bone was still growing because it's so distinct. You can also see down here, besides the presence of much more red marrow, you can see a line of cartilage at the end of the bone as well. And again, that's how bones grow lengthwise, is cartilage is put there first, and then it's replaced by bone. Okay, now if we compare that epiphyseal plate in this bone, we compare it to the other bone, and you can see that there is no plate there, but you might be able to see just a very thin line, the remnants of that epiphyseal plate. And then this bone is completely filled with yellow marrow. There's just a tiny bit of red marrow at the very ends of the bone. But again, this one was done growing because that plate is now just a thin line. So we call that the epiphyseal line. So you can really see the difference between a growing bone and an adult bone. Okay, that's it for our cow femur, but I noticed this piece had quite a few of the tissues we learned about during our last unit, and I wanted to show them to you just to make sure you saw them. So this is clearly skeletal muscle, right? You remember that from our first unit. And then this one has like a really good cross-section of some dense connective tissue. So this is either a tendon or a ligament. Oh, sorry. So you can see it, how densely packed the fibers are, and you can see the fibers running through there, how densely packed they are. So this is a cross section of a ligament, and then you can of course see lots of adipose as well in several different places. So there's a little review too, and then of course we have the hyaline cartilage, the bone, and the adipose within the bone and on the outside of the bone. So a little review of last unit as well.